on. Okay.
Awesome.
Hi, everybody. It's Kate here from ADHDkidscanthrive.com. And my curiosity led me to Kamden, who's here with me today, who's the founder of the ADHDdirectory.com. And it made me, as I was looking at her Instagram and following her, she has very entertaining TikToks that are very relatable. I was curious about her story personally because she has ADHD. She has a kid or two with ADHD, as well as that's turned her into running this business that's incredibly a great resource for people who are looking for the right help in their lives, which is what we all need. Okay, so let's get started, Kamden. Personally, let's just start with your own personal story about how you found out that you had ADHD.
Okay, so 2019, I kind of landed on what I call like this mental breakdown. It was probably a mix of panic attacks, anxiety, depression, but it was not the normal Kamden that I was used to. And I had been working really hard on some business goals in a different business that I was at and pushing myself to what I thought was what it was going to take in order to find success. But what it did is actually just like felt like it broke my brain. And so in the course of trying to figure out what had gone wrong and why I was feeling the way I was, I stumbled upon ADHD. And my brother had been diagnosed. He's just 3 years younger than me, a couple of years previously.
Okay.
And so when I saw him a couple months later, after I had this kind of curiosity that it could be that, he just started telling me everything that he had learned, and it all lined up with everything I had learned. So eventually that next spring, I was officially diagnosed.
Okay, so let me ask, how did you make it through life to your 30s before you hit that like crises moment?
I think that I was lucky to have a lot of support from incredible parents, and there was enough just self-worth instilled in who I was that it allowed me to kind of recenter myself to more important things of my worth, that even though I wasn't performing as highly as my peers on tests or on projects, or actually projects were my strong point, but other things that I felt like I was a little behind on, a little slow on, that it always came back to this idea that I was a worthy person, and that regardless of how I acted or things that I did, that I was worthy of love and that I was talented. And I was a high achiever. And so I think that and a leader and in school and different things like that. So I think those things kept me propelling forward and with enough dopamine and excitement to buffer the inadequacies that I felt.
Yep.
But there was a lot of hacking along the way, but I can't not say that I didn't have immense support. My parents had no idea I had ADHD, but they were loving and kind, and they saw the things that lit me up. And
what things did you do when you were younger that kind of lit you up?
Loved sports. So I grew up playing lots of soccer. I played club soccer for 7 years in Southern California. I did gymnastics when I was young. I played softball. I did diving.
Wow.
Show choir, and was involved in the California Scholarship Federation. So there was just a lot. I was really involved in like my church groups as well. And so there was a lot of outlets, tons of outlets.
That you felt like you were thriving in too, right? Besides
I think, it was always comparing myself to the top, right? So there was this lag that I felt when I compared myself to other leaders and other people in my AP classes or in those arenas. I felt like they could develop themselves so much more quickly, and it didn't take as much effort. I was the kid that was up to one or two in the morning doing my homework. And I still had like 7 or 8 questions that I couldn't find in my textbook, right? And they got it done in 20 minutes. So it took a lot of extra effort for me to remain up there. But at least I could say that I was a high achiever, that I was filling other people's lives. So therefore in that service and in that help, I think helped me feel worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a lot of grit and perseverance,
A
it
ton
sounds
of
like.
grit. Yeah,
Yes.
that has made, well, and that's so common within ADHDers, but that determination to succeed is a gift in a roundabout way. But that's also what led me to my breaking point. So, we have to understand our brain a little bit more.
Right. Okay. So now you're learning about your brain, and then you have children. How many children do you have?
I have 4 daughters.
4 daughters. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. They're 8, 7, 5, and 7 months.
Wow. Okay. And do some of them, did they get the genetic gene?
I think so. I mean, you can imagine my radar is on like full alert right now. And so I have to be careful to not like, that's ADHD. No, that's just adolescence, like trying to figure it out. So I'm giving it time and I'm not putting too much pressure, but there is a lot of structures and systems in our house that is very neurodivergent. And I think everyone benefits from that.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. What are some things that you do to support your kids that may or may not be neurodivergent?
Sure. I think the biggest thing that when my husband and I started recognizing that our house wasn't a very happy place is that we started to figure out what times of day were the most chaotic and anxiety filled. And then we started to figure out what could we do in order to set our kids up for more success, which really resonated with me because I was an elementary school teacher for 4 years. And so the structures, the systems, that also is something that I've done in the classroom. So just being okay with applying that in the house. So, but bedtime, we have a routine where we flip over there's like 6 different tasks that get done and they get to flip those over, and each one of them has their own task list. Same with the morning routine. Those are 2 really helpful things. Just things as simple as these are where your shoes go by the door, so we're not having to look all over the house. Setting up systems for myself, launch pads.
What's a launch pad?
Yeah, so the activities that we do consistently. So that's like going out the door, putting on your shoes, changing the baby's diaper, like things that happen consistently, making sure that those items are always in one place or in one place in a couple places in the house. And for a typical brain, that seems like no big deal, but for a neurodivergent brain, we're often all over the place. And so we have to call them launch pads. We have to call them starting places. So this is where I hang my keys and my purse, and they don't ever go anywhere but right here. And getting used to that. Also, like an evening routine for myself of getting rid of all the stuff on my vanity, except for the like essentials, the only things that I use, so that I don't get bogged down by the visual chaos and then not want to go to bed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's for me, that's for my kids. My kids also, like, we don't fold clothes. Their chore is to separate them from the bins, and we've labeled all of their drawers of what goes in each drawer, and all they have to do is throw them in. And so it's like adjusting the expectation in our home to what makes sense for our family and what we're okay with, while still providing some structure for them.
Yeah. I think those are huge tips. I actually wish I would have learned those tips earlier in my own personal parenting journey. But I think it's hard sometimes. Well, things are different now. There's people like you on Instagram who are like sharing these kind of things so easily and making them sound simple and doable. It's awesome. So you guys need to pay attention to what she's saying, because back in my day when my little guy was younger, you had to like pay someone and seek people out and like literally pick their brain apart on just these little tiny things that can make a significant difference in your family life. So Kamden, also being educated is being a teacher, and then teaching, I think, is a wonderful skill when you're raising neurodivergent people or you're neurodivergent yourself. In your business, do you provide resources for people to kind of get like I was thinking of, the cards that you can flip. Right? Like how, like if you're not a creative,
how do you do that?
Mother, how the heck? And you just, and if you're working mom, you don't have time to like get this stuff together, right? Like, how do you provide
So,
resources on where you can get these, what they seem very simple, but to institute these kind of rhythms and patterns at
yeah,
home?
I honestly believe, and I will get back to your direct question, so hang in here with me, but I think that learning how to coach myself and learning how to recognize overwhelm in my brain, and then figure out what the instigator is of that chaos, and then recognize that we with ADHD are extremely creative and we have the answers inside our brain. And so if we can get really clear on what the actual issue is that's causing chaos and anxiety and heartache and tears and all of, tantrums, then figuring out what a solution might be to help that instigating point,
Yeah.
then things become more clear. Because what might work in my home, even the structure of my home with my kids, looks great, but it might not work for another family. So for me, I would say the number one thing I could provide people with are resources for coaching, because it's absolutely changed my life. But now to get to the nitty gritty of what you just asked, those resources actually came from another account called Motherhood on Purpose. And she has a child with autism and ADHD, and then another with ADHD. And she's neurotypical, and her husband has ADHD. And so she is in a really interesting position because she's having to advocate for all these brains that are different from hers.
Right.
And in so doing, has come up with some really amazing systems, normalized a lot of systems that have been helpful. So that's where I got little circles, and then I just remade them on Canva. So
Okay, that's great. Okay, good to know. Okay, so tell me how you got into your business of what you do.
I started, the fall of 2019. I just got this really big gut feeling that I needed to start to tell my story, as a 36-year-old at that time, on probably having ADHD. And this is right before the pandemic. And my brother introduced me to TikTok. And so I started to make TikToks, and they started to take off because during the pandemic, everyone went to TikTok.
Right.
And they were all dealing with mental health struggles. And especially those with ADHD, going to the office was providing structure. And now they didn't have structure and their worlds were falling apart. And so they were looking for help, education, advocacy with ADHD. And so I got tons of questions in my DMs all about that. And at first, I just tried to answer them as quickly as I could. And then I started taking free consultations with people to talk things through. And like I said, I was a mom of 3 at the time, and my time was very limited. And so that's when I started to turn it into a business, honestly, just out of needing to keep my head above water. I also recognized that the people that really wanted to change, the people that were really willing to put in the work, were willing to also pay for a consultation with me. And then they would go on to hire their own coaches. So in a way, it was that piece of ADHD brain of needing the, oh shoot, what's the word? They needed to feel like tied to this choice. They needed to have some kind of
Like skin in the game, like buy-in. Yeah.
Have some skin in the game. And a lot of the time we don't commit to things unless we really do. So it was beautiful, just turn into this business. And as I continued to connect with coaches and psychologists and a whole bunch of different people, I knew I wasn't the expert. I was in the middle of it all. But I was able to really get to know the individual, where their struggles were, and then the niches and strong points of each coach, and start to connect them with the coaches that I felt were the best for their scenario.
Oh, that's great. You know why that's really good? Because people with ADHD and their parents are all overwhelmed in life as it is. And to go find resources, you have to be an incredibly organized, persistent person that's hyper focused on finding help. And that is not easy to do. It's exhausting. So this is a great service. I'm happy to have found you. Okay, so coaching, do parents reach out to you that have a kid
Yeah.
and they're looking for parent education coaching?
Mhm. Yep.
Okay. And then how old do kids need to be before they start with an ADHD coach?
So the youngest that one of my coaches provides is 8 years old.
Okay.
So 7 to 8, I think that's third grade. Well, second, third grade, depends on the kid, right?
Right.
Uh, and what's really interesting too is that a lot of the coaching actually begins with the parents. So while ADHD piece of like getting your kid help is important, it's equally, if not more important as they're young, to educate the parents and to coach the parents on how to be a parent to an ADHDer.
Right. Right.
So that's, so I have parent coaches, but I also have coaches that work with the kiddos.
Okay. And then obviously you provide for adults, right?
Yeah,
Young.
the bulk of it is adults. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. I get a lot of requests for parents who have those kids who are like 18 to 25
Yeah, huge.
who are struggling and trying to find their way into life. So an ADHD coach, I think for sure for that age group would be so beneficial if they're willing to buy into getting the support and put the steps in place that they need to become more independent.
Yeah,
I would say.
that's one of those tricky ages where it's going to take some swallowing of your pride a little bit, that this is a pill to swallow, that I have ADHD and that means that I can't just continue to hack it. Because I remember being in my 20s and it was just still a hack fest. And so I was like, oh, I'll just get through. I'll just get through. I'll just get through. Now, if I would have had resources, I think I would have been like, thank you. I would have, clung to them, just knowing my personality.
Right.
But a lot of the time it's very difficult. And I'd say even more difficult, and this is a generalization, but something that I have seen for men to recognize that they need that. And but I will tell you that once that shifts in their brain,
It goes.
it's incredible progress they make.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, good. Do you have anything else you'd like to share with us?
Oh goodness.
Or pass on anything, any words of wisdom?
Well, I think that there's nothing that's that you are incapable of achieving with ADHD, but if you think that you can continue to walk through life pretending like you're neurotypical, you're going to do yourself a disservice. And I like to give this story a lot. My dad grew up playing baseball. He loved baseball, and there was a major league pitcher who didn't have a hand. And this major league pitcher worked his whole life learning how to throw the ball and catch the ball at the same hand. And he ended up throwing a no-hitter, and he was an incredible athlete. And I think if we think of coaching or think of help or therapy with this ADHD brain, it's this understanding of our body. It's this understanding of our brain that we're going to have to do things a little bit differently in order to find success. But that doesn't mean that we're going to have any less success. In fact, when we can really hone in on our skills, knowing what to put into our basket, what to outsource, how to outsource, what that might look like, then truly that's when we start to flourish. That's when we start to feel joyful. That's when we start to have light in our life. And that's why I'm really passionate about coaching. I think that some podcasts are the best free coaching you can get out of there. And it starts with this education piece. Understand your brain, see your thoughts. So that's the encouragement I can give.
And get help and take action.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's what I find. So I don't do direct ADHD coaching, but I do coaching for entrepreneurs that have ADHD to get their passion projects up and running. And that's what I find with them too. It's so incredible to see what happens from week 1 to week 12 as they start to understand their brain and work with it instead of going with like what all the experts have told them. And it's just this blossoming effect that happens. It's so beautiful.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Very good. Very inspiring, Kamden.
Oh, well, it's like everyone else is inspiring. They inspire me. And it's the truth over and over and over again. This isn't a one-time thing. This is something that I see constantly. Every single client, every single person that decides to commit they find it. And that doesn't mean that we don't have ups and downs. That's life, right? It's always going to be a challenge, but where we are in compared to where we were or where we could have been is so much more progressed and developed.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. We're not alone in this journey.
No,
Lots of people are doing it
heroes.
and lots of people are figuring it out. It definitely is